Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Smith. Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Synergized, where we bring exciting, interesting individuals to you who've been there, done that in regards to serving self, serving communities, and serving others at the forefront of their careers. And today I'm so honored to have a special guest, Mr. Scott Miller, join us. And I'm sure you're going to gain a lot of expertise that may help you as you continue to develop your leadership toolbox. Scott, good day, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, good afternoon, Kevin.
Well, Scott and I actually are just meeting during this recording and episode piece, and a good friend of ours, a common friend, soon to be Dr. Leslie Winter. I know she's pursuing her doctorate at a university, Oakland City, that I'm very familiar with, and she's put us in contact. And Scott, she speaks very highly of you and such admiration for Leslie and the difference she made in her career and education, in particular in the Grant County, Mississauga area.
Yeah, unbelievable things. I continue to follow up with her. I mean, we probably talk once or twice a week. But on LinkedIn, just all of the legacy of the things that she has done and implemented. And now that her team is carrying on there at Mississauga, it's incredible.
Well, I know she's done a wonderful job from a legacy piece. And you were talking a bit about the impact overall. And this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to podcasting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. In fact, in Grant County, where Leslie, she was one of our guests on one of our episodes, but we did, and it's still going, at a podcast called Where We Landed, all about how people landed in Grant County.
Scott, you certainly have a bit of a interesting background, a number of different diverse points from a leadership piece. Before I go further, introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners here today.
Sure. Well, I'm a kid that was born in Nebraska, raised in Northwest Illinois. My grandparents were dairy farmers, both in Iowa on my mom's side and Illinois on my dad's side. So grew up around that. My dad left the farm to become a director of finance for Honeywell Corporation. My mom was a school teacher, kindergarten teacher for about 30 years in the local school district in Freeport, Illinois, which is where I grew up. The mascot there for the Freeport High School is the Pretzels, most unique mascot in the nation, according to ESPN. And got into sports. My uncle was a high school basketball coach at another high school in Northern Illinois, and I grew up around that. And so had a passion for sports and had a chance to play. Went to college at a small school in Ohio. It's about 5,000 students now, but called Cedarville University. And then left that to come to Indianapolis and start my career in public accounting. After that, began running businesses. So I ran a firm called Mainscape, commercial landscape firm, which our team had a chance to grow that all over the United States. I then left there to run economic development for Mayor Ballard in Indianapolis for a few years. And then we merged a bunch of organizations together under the Indy Chamber umbrella. And I had the opportunity to run that merged organization for a few more years. I left that to go and run a large construction firm headquartered in Fort Wayne, but had offices in Indianapolis called the Hagerman Group. And then after about 5 years of doing that, bought my own firm in Marion, Indiana, which we ran from 2018 until the fall of 2023. We closed that down last October. And since that point in time, I've been trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do next? And so one of the things that I'm intrigued about, Kevin, because I think I may be following in your path here, is to get into corporate coaching and individual coaching with my background in coaching. So I also 20 years ago started coaching high school basketball. And so that's a passion of mine, and I've been doing that. And I'm now at a school called Providence Cristo Rey in Indianapolis, which is a really unique school. But just ended my first year there and beginning our second year, and super excited about that as well.
Well, that's fascinating. You mentioned Honeywell. I know from my days in manufacturing, Honeywell was one of the front runners of the whole Six Sigma lean methodology programming aspect. When I was in contract manufacturing, there were a lot of best practices with Honeywell that we worked with. And actually, I think Honeywell Freeport was a customer of ours for a window of time back in the day. So it's very interesting. And Scott, you talked about public accountancy, and then you move into some of the other type of industrial pieces. Talk a bit about what Scott learned about himself that led him into some of the other pieces, such as industrial.
Yeah. So I learned I don't like accounting. When I was picking a major in college, wasn't a very motivated student in college. I was there to play basketball and have fun. And school was kind of the secondary thing, which it shouldn't be, but it was. So I started as an engineer. Honeywell, the firm or the organization that my dad was a part of was MicroSwitch. So it was a division of Honeywell, and it employed 5,000 people in our small town of about 25,000 people. So it had a large influence in that community, and had a ton of engineers because they were developing and engineering different micro switches that would go in aircraft and space shuttles and automobiles and the home heating and cooling units. So my dad said, "Hey, engineering seems to be the thing of the future. Like that's probably where you need to study." So I thought, well, I'll try that. And that didn't work out well. I almost was on my way home after the first semester because of my grades. And so I pivoted to just general studies. And then I started noticing that all of the accounting majors had jobs by Thanksgiving of their senior year and basically had the rest of their senior year to goof off. And I thought, well, that seems like a pretty good idea. So I talked it over, and my dad actually said, "Hey, if you're going to major in something in business, accounting's probably the thing to do because it's the basis of all business." And his perspective was you could learn the marketing, you could learn the management side of things, all the different aspects of it. But if you had that basis of accounting, you'd be able to read financials, you'd be able to talk to bankers and insurance companies and all of the different things that needed a financial perspective. And he was right. That served me well. So I got into public accounting, and public accounting, as you know, is a very time
Mm.
consuming endeavor for a young person. And so it's all encompassing 50, 60, 70 hour weeks during busy season, 80-hour weeks. And so quickly decided like, hey, this isn't for me. But most people, if you want to leave at a right time, you become a senior in public. So there's a staff accountant and then a senior, and 5 years is kind of the general time frame that they give you. And so that's when I made the leap and got out and had the chance to go become CFO of a company called Mainscape. And Mainscape is a commercial landscape firm. It was local at the time. Two brothers owned it, and I always tell people they loved each other but didn't necessarily like each other. And so neither of them wanted the other one to run it. So they asked me and they said, "Hey, would you be open to running this?" I remember picking up the phone just to get some advice from my dad. And he said, "That's the dumbest thing you could ever do. Like go work for two brothers and you're not part of the family." But it worked. And we grew it all over the United States for over the next 10 years and saw it grow from a $6 million in revenue to I think it was around 45 million by the time that I exited to go work with Mayor Ballard's team.
Scott, as you go through the experiences you've had, what's kind of in the white space there a little bit is all these transitions that are occurring, right? Or some may say transformation. Some individuals find it difficult to transition from a career or an industry to another role or into another industry. Talk a bit about some of the lessons you've learned and what advice might you give for someone who finds themselves out of work or considering moving from job A to something completely different.
Yeah. Well, and I'm kind of in that space right now, Kevin, as you know, after we shut our business down last fall, is trying to figure out that next thing to do. And as you age, sometimes that's positive and sometimes it's negative. But one of the things that I think I've been really successful at is relationships and building relationships. And I think that those are so critical for you as you look for your next thing to do and try not to burn bridges whenever you do leave somewhere. Although sometimes it's hard for that not to happen, depending on situations. And um, so there were two things that I think that carried with me throughout this. One was leadership skills, and you know, your organization's called Leadership Synergized. And so being able to lead people and there's a quote, I think it's Maxwell's at least owned it, but um, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so if you care about people, generally you can find some pretty good fits into organizations. So that was number one. And then number two is how do you go out and recruit the best people? Like we wanted A players on the teams that we've had. And I think we've been pretty successful at that. And a lot of that came from just knowing people and having good relationships with people. So those things I think can carry with you no matter what industry you're in. And I think, you know, as you said, I haven't really been in the same industry. I've left a lot of careers that people generally stay in that industry and have just kind of floated. So I'm somewhat of a generalist, I think.
Scott, one of the areas you mentioned was stepping away from industry to kind of join like public administration with Mayor Ballard in that setting. Talk a little bit about the adjustments, if any, you had to make, or where did you feel that you were just right to step into that type of career at that point in time?
Yeah, so Mayor Ballard was an amazing leader. So here's a guy, former Marine, but he knew what he wanted, and he basically said, "Hey, here's the mission," and then he let people go do their thing, and
Mm,
he hired a bunch of young people to basically run his administration and hard worker. He was out in the community all the time at all of these HOA events and stuff,
mm,
that things that I'd never want to do, but it earned him the love of the city. And he was a Republican in a large urban area, which are primarily Democratic
mm,
run organizations. And so, but he was able to transfer because he cared about people. And so the thing I think that I learned was that you can take business principles and apply them to government and see it work really well. So we had goals in economic development. We had numbers of jobs that we wanted to attain, numbers, you know, we want to see our property tax base go up, and we basically incentivized people within our nonprofit and said, hey, we're going to treat this like a for-profit, even though it's a nonprofit, and we're going to go after these
mm.
goals, and we're going to pay if you hit them, and we're not going to cap the pay. Like we're going to say, hey, you can make as much as you want if you can hit these numbers. And our team was incredibly successful at that. I had remarkable people that joined us for that run. And 2008, September 2008 is when I joined. And if you remember, it was September 2008 when the markets crashed, and
Mhm.
that was a really good time to be in economic development. But our team still took it on, and I think we did some pretty amazing things during that time.
And how many years did you work with Mayor Ballard?
Yeah, I was with him for about 3 years, 3.5 years in that first administration. And then that's when the merger took place and had the chance to then kind of parlay that into a broader skill set of running the Indy Chamber, of which economic development was a piece of that.
Yeah. And just for clarity for our viewers who may be watching or listening from other parts of the world or country, Mayor Ballard and where you're located now, and you mentioned Providence, Cristo Rey, Indianapolis, Indiana, the capital of the state of Indiana.
Correct. Yep. Yep. I should have clarified that. Thank you, Kevin.
No, no, that's my role here, man. I'm the one that lets you down, so I apologize. But one of the interesting things we were talking about, and we see some of the memorabilia back on your shelf behind you, and the football helmet. What a wonderful opportunity you had that you were presented with that helmet as kind of a memorabilia item. Why don't you share that experience with our viewers?
Yeah, so timing is everything in life. And when I had the opportunity to take on the role at the Indy Chamber, we were in the process of bidding for and winning the Super Bowl to come to Indianapolis. And so I had a chance to be a small part of that team, but everybody who was on that team had a chance to get one of these football helmets. It was a part of the Super Bowl host committee. And then as a member of the Indy Chamber and having the chance to lead that, was able to be a part of that week here in Indianapolis, which was really special for our community and for our state, but especially for Central Indiana to be able to host that first really Northern football
Mm.
Super Bowl. And since then, you know, they've taken that to a lot of other northern cities, but Indianapolis really had the opportunity to kind of be a leader. And we, for those who are around the nation, I mean, Indianapolis is a special place, and it is an amateur sports capital of the world. And 30 to 40 years ago, a group of people got together and said, hey, what can we do to make Indianapolis special? And that was one of the things that they decided on. And now we host a Final Four for men's Final Four every 5 years. The headquarters of the NCAA is in Indianapolis. And then we also host a women's Final Four. And then on the off years, we get a regional or a first
Mm.
round. And so it's a really cool place to be. And we've got Caitlin Clark now with the Indiana Fever, who's kind of a nationally renowned figure. Our Pacers had a really good year last year, and the Colts are kind of in a comeback mode right now. And so it's a fun town to be in right now.
Scott, what were some of the obstacles that you all on that committee to bring the Super Bowl to Indianapolis had to overcome, or at least had to be aware of as you went through that process?
Well, I think the thing, weather, most people want to go somewhere nice and warm for Super Bowl. So Miami got a lot of them, New Orleans, Southern California, Arizona was getting Super Bowls. Dallas, even though Dallas had some icy weather at times, but I think that was the biggest thing. Like, how do you sell somebody, this group of owners, on the fact that you could pull it off even if the weather was bad? And Indianapolis had been known for hosting they hosted the Goodwill games, which Leslie Winter was a part of that back in the mid to late 80s. And so we've had a history, and then running these NCAA tournaments. I think most people would say, in fact, during the COVID year, we had the whole NCAA tournament in Indianapolis. It didn't have different sites. It was Indianapolis. And so we've become known as a city who could pull off these big events. And I think that was the selling point. And then our corporate community really got behind it. I mean, we raised millions of dollars to be able to host the event. And the corporate community is so giving here. And that was, I think, a couple of the selling points for us.
Scott, what an interesting background you have. And for our viewers, I'm excited to tell you Scott's going to stick around and join us again next week. We're going to record episode 2, and we're going to build further on some of his lessons he's learned and let him tell us a bit about when did he recognize that he was built to develop and be a leader in his career. Scott, God bless you, my friend. Again, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart for you being here with us.
Great to be with you, Kevin. Thanks for what you're doing.
And thank you for watching Leadership Synergized and our special guest, Scott Miller. Again, he'll be back next week, and I appreciate you so much. You are loved and you are needed. Keep developing those skills because you are making a difference. God bless you.